So huge spoilers for this week's episode of Daredevil Born Again, episode 4. There's going to be spoilers just straight away. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, maybe don't watch this video. But Disney Plus pretty much wanted everybody to know that Frank Castle, or John Bernthal as Frank Castle, was returning in this episode because I had no idea he was going to be in the episode this week. And from what I've seen online, it feels like a lot of people didn't know he was going to be in the episode this week either. And then, literally, as soon as the episode dropped, like not just waiting an hour so that people who are watching it straight away have a chance to see it. No, just as soon as the episode dropped, they released a poster with John Bernthal as Frank Castle on it, being like John Bernthal's return. The preview picture for the episode on Disney Plus was Frank and Matt talking. It was that one scene. So it feels really weird that they just threw that at you. And the cynical part of me wonders if the engagement or the viewership for the show isn't exactly what they expected or isn't exactly what they wanted, because we found out that the premiere for Daredevil Born Again did about the same numbers as the Agatha All Along premiere. And no shade towards Agatha All Along, I actually really enjoyed that show. But it's a bit surprising to me that Daredevil Born Again, essentially Daredevil season 4, one of the most popular and well loved TV shows of all time, not just comic book shows, TV shows of all time, is doing about the same viewership numbers as Agatha All Along. That's kind of surprising to me. So that makes me wonder if viewership hasn't been amazing and they're thinking maybe people are waiting to catch up on the show later on or waiting until the parts of the show that they really want to see happens. So they're like, okay, just showcase that John Bernthal as Frank is back, get those viewers on board, they'll watch the show. Because, I mean, for me personally, I probably would have preferred them not to reveal that and not for that to be a big thing. I mean, everybody would be talking about it straight away, but I would rather like Disney themselves not spoil that because it was just one scene. It's a longish scene. It's like 5 minutes long, but it is just one scene of the episode that is very much towards the end of the episode. Like when I saw the preview pictures and the poster dropped, I was like, oh shit, it's like this entire episode just going to be about Frank. I didn't think he was going to be coming into the show this fast. I thought they were going to wait a little bit before bringing him in. Like I thought we'd have last week's ending where it's revealed a cop killed, a White Tiger wearing the Punisher getup, and that we were going to have a few episodes ramping up until Frank's actual debut in the show. I didn't expect him to be dropped in so fast. So when I saw those preview pictures and like the poster, I was like, this is going to be an entire episode about Frank. This is great. And then I checked the timing and it was like 15 minutes late and or like 15 minutes left of the episode and he just showed up and I was like, okay. So this is just teasing him for later on in the show, which is fine. That's really cool. But at that point, maybe don't spoil it. Maybe just let it unravel. But I get it from a marketing perspective, you want to showcase that the Punisher is back in the show. Now that said, that scene was absolutely fantastic. Probably like one of my top 3 scenes in the show so far in Daredevil Born Again. It was great. The dialogue was great. Frank just pushing Matt to that area where Matt hits him and talking about Foggy and Bullseye and how Matt didn't do what needed to be done and how Matt's letting Bullseye live while Foggy doesn't get to live. And then Frank bringing up his dead son and his family and all this sort of stuff, calling him Red. It felt like Daredevil from Netflix. It felt like the season 2 of the show. It was just so good. And I mean, I've not been hating Daredevil Born Again, but if you've checked out my review for episodes 1 to 3, you probably get the hint that I'm like, it's not the original Daredevil, and it's quite underwhelming when compared to the original Daredevil. That scene from this week felt like original Daredevil to me. That made me go, holy shit, we are so back. This is the kind of stuff I'm waiting for. This is the level of dialogue I want to see. And in general, I felt like this episode was firing on all cylinders on the dialogue front. Like we had the person that Matt was going to for lawyer stuff. I think his name was Leroy, who stole some, I don't know, desserts. It sounded like an American brand of dessert that I'm not familiar with. But somebody who is relying on food stamps and is relying on money and is getting it cut because he gets sent to prison because he's trying to get food for himself, and it's just a vicious cycle of that sort of stuff. And that his kind of breakdown and monologue where he was just complaining about the system and how is all of this fair, and Matt's just like, it isn't fair. I'm sorry. And that sort of being, along with his meeting with Frank, being sort of the push that Matt needs to realize that, okay, he needs to be back in the world of Daredevil. He needs to be back in the world of vigilantism because operating inside the system isn't helping. It isn't doing anything at all. And that, he's not been Daredevil for a year now, but what has he actually accomplished in that year? Sure, he's mentally more healthy. He's in a better place in his life or whatever, but Matt can't live with himself unless he's actually making a difference in the world. And he has to come to grips with the fact that for over the past year, just working inside the system, he has not been making a difference in the world. And now he can if he finally goes back to who he is. And that whole scene of like going through the Daredevil helmets and looking for just looking for his sticks and something to really bring him back into the world was extremely exciting. I loved every second of it. That whole ending was great, and the sort of the parallels between Fisk and having like Adam tied up in his weird little basement with the rabbit in the snow, or white rabbit in the snow, or whatever the picture is called. It just all felt very, very, very well done with the parallels. Now, I will say there is one part of the show so far that even in episode 4 I'm like, I don't think that I'm enjoying this super much, and it is the Fisk slash Vanessa, I don't know, like counseling Adam having an affair, something like that stuff. I don't know. It's not doing it for me so far. It's the one part of the show that I'm having a little bit of a hard time connecting with each week. I said in my review for episodes 1 to 3 that in general I do feel like the Fisk stuff feels very disconnected and doesn't feel as interesting as what's going on with Matt and like the lawyer stuff. But I will say that this week's episode, a lot of the Fisk stuff was actually great. I love the stuff with Daniel, I think his name is Michael Gandolfini's character, and all that sort of stuff, and just the Fisk going around trying to do things for the city, and like, you know, visiting the school and then visiting the Latvian National Heritage Day and all that sort of stuff. That was really enjoyable to me. I liked a lot of that, but it's the actual stuff with Vanessa that I'm like, this feels very heavily disconnected from everything else going on in the show. It almost feels like a different show quality level. I'm having a hard time getting into it. I know, just I know that the point of it is to show that Fisk has not changed. Like the fact that he's had Adam tied up in this room or whatever, or like in this like prison cage almost for whoever knows how long. That shows that Fisk has not changed. That he's lying to the world and he's pretending he's changed, but he's not. You know, every so often he goes down to this area and he pretty much reverts to his old self immediately. You know, this doesn't feel like Matt, where Matt is almost completely out of this world. He's had a few relapses, but for the most part, he's completely gone. Fisk is lying to himself and pretending he's gone from this world, but every so often, maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks, he dips his toe back into this world, and that's that. He can't escape it. So I get that that's what they're doing with the Vanessa stuff, but for me, so far, I need to see more of it. I need to see where we're going with it. I need to see what is actually going to happen with that sort of stuff before I'm like, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. Um, One thing about the Frank stuff, I will say, it's extremely surprising to me that everyone pretty much agreed that Frank was going to be super, super, super pissed when he found out about the cops using his logo, and that he was going to go crazy and kill them all straight away. That it was like going to be, you know, he was going to hunt them down mercilessly and just be very angry about the whole thing. And then this episode plays it out as like Frank doesn't really give a shit. Like he's like, yeah, they're doing that. It's I don't, you know, I don't want them to do it, but it's none of my business. Like, what's it got to do with me? And Matt's like, what the fuck you mean? What's it got to do to you? Like, they're using your logo, they're using your symbol, you know, take care of this shit. And Frank's like, no, why would I do that? Like that was really surprising to me. I mean, it makes sense for the character. I'm not saying it doesn't feel like in line with the character, but it's interesting that they were doing that after it felt like everyone unanimously agreed who's watching the show that Frank was going to be super pissed and just straight away go after these cops and be like, you know, just killing them, like no remorse and whatever. But that's apparently not the case. It's going to take some pushing from Matt to get Frank into the place where he wants to do that sort of stuff. Now we know that Frank is going to be in the Punisher getup in the new version of the show because we saw it very briefly in one of the teasers. So that's going to happen at some point, which is really exciting. I wonder when it's going to happen. Episode 5 and episode 6 drop together next week, and I've heard that episode 5 is a very like standalone fillerish episode that has been considered by some people to be the best episode of the show, but by the overwhelming majority seems to be considered the worst episode of the show of the people who have seen it. So people are saying like they released 5 and 6 together because both episodes are extremely short, and that like not short, but both episodes are like around the half-hour mark when you take out credits and stuff like that, which is pretty short. So people are thinking maybe they're releasing them together because of that. Other people are thinking that episode 5, even Disney knows it's not the best, and that they're releasing episode 6 together because they don't feel it's fair for episode 5 to be released on one week, especially if people are like, why did they release this on its own? Like, this isn't a great episode, sort of thing. So we'll see. But I would not expect to see Frank back next week if it's supposed to be like a fillerish one-off episode. I would guess. I mean, he could be in episode 6 next week, but I know part of me is thinking maybe it's like episode 7 or episode 8 before we see Frank properly return to this and see what goes on there. But you can still really get the feeling. Like episode 4, I really enjoyed it, but you can still kind of get the messy feeling of a lot of conflicting ideas going on in this show. Like the Leroy stuff was good, but it did feel a little disconnected from a lot of the other stuff going on. The Fisk stuff is really good, but it still feels very disconnected from a lot of the other stuff that's going on. It just feels like a lot of different storylines that they haven't had any overlap yet, but they surely will. The Muse stuff as well that is going on in the background. We had 2 Muse scenes in this episode, and they both just felt like a different show. They felt like a slasher sort of horror show, and the connection between what's going on between that and everything else still needs to come about. Like, and I mean, I feel like there has to be a crossover at some point where the Muse stuff somehow connects to the cop stuff, because if there's just 2 concurrent storylines that don't overlap at all, that might make this to be a jumbled, messy season when all is said and done. And I mean, it is a little messy already, but I'm hoping it cleans itself up. But if the Muse and the cop stuff don't really intersect or interject or anything, then it'll be hard for it not to feel messy the whole way through, which is kind of what I'm hoping that they'll avoid. One of my major criticisms from the first 2 episodes was the visuals, and after episode 4, I do think that the night scenes still have a lot to improve on. Like the final sort of sequence with Matt on the rooftop, you know, practicing his Daredevil tricks or whatever, it didn't look great visually to me. I think the night scenes is one of the things that this show needs to get a better grasp at, because the night scenes in the original show, they never felt artificial. They were dark for sure, but it felt like it was a real night scene. Night scenes in Born Again feel very artificial. Generally, it feels like they're on a set, they're on a green screen set, especially those rooftop scenes. It does not feel like, for example, the rooftop scene from season 2 when Frank and Matt are talking. That feels like they're on an actual rooftop with the city in the background. Except the night scene at the end of episode 4 of Daredevil Born Again, it feels like Matt's just on a green screen soundstage set, whatever you want to call it. Like he's not actually on a rooftop. And I mean, you don't have to put him on the rooftop, but you still kind of want it to feel like he is. But other than the night scenes, I thought the visuals were pretty good in this episode. I thought a lot of the shots we were doing were pretty cool. A lot of little things, little camera stuff we were doing was really cool. There was a scene where Daniel got in the cab and the camera sort of went through the cab that he was in out to the other side to where the police car was driving by, and then we sort of focus on the police for a sec. That was a really cool, like, stylistic shot that I enjoyed. It reminded me of like the original Daredevil a little bit, which was really cool. But yeah, I mean, episode 4, I enjoyed it. It might be my favorite episode of the show. I'll need to think about that a little bit more. I'm excited to see where they go. I did not expect to see Frank this soon, which is really exciting. But how did you feel about Daredevil Born Again? Episode 4, did you enjoy it? Your favorite episode, your least favorite episode, did you not enjoy it? Let me know all that. And if you're not subscribed, make sure to do so. There will be Marvel videos every single week. If you are subscribed, a like and a share is a huge help. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.